Welcome and thanks for joining us at the Regional Transportation Authority of Central Oklahoma special virtual meeting. As usual, I have a few quick announcements before we begin the meeting. If the teleconference for any reason,
your meeting ID followed by pound.
Hello. If the teleconference for any reason is disconnected at any time during the meeting shall be stopped and reconvened once the audio connection is restored. If communications are unable to be restored within 15 minutes, all items remaining for consideration will be continued to the next regularly scheduled meeting of the RTA on March 19th at 2:30 p.m. via teleconference. The agenda and documents are located online at www.rtaok.org. Anyone wishing to speak about an agenda item or to speak under public comments, please call 405-297-2824. Again, 405-297-2824 or text 405-479-1615. Please provide your name, phone number, the item number, and the reason you wish to comment. If you call in or text in after your item has been heard, you will be allowed to speak under public comments. I ask that all participants, except for the board of directors, keep their phones on mute until they are recognized to speak. Directors will be allowed to ask questions or comment at any time during the meeting. With that, let's call the meeting to order. I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Chairperson Henry.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Hutchison. Oh, Director
Mary.
Hutchison.
Here.
Director Boggs.
Here.
Director Malone.
Here.
Director Vick. I don't think he.
We see him. He's here, so. I
All
guess
right,
we count him.
Director Bud.
Present.
Director Eady.
Here.
Great. It appears that all members are present and we do have a quorum. Now we'll move to agenda item number 3, which is consideration of approval of the minutes of March 17th, 2021 Regional Transportation Authority special meeting. Those minutes have previously been distributed. Are there any questions or amendments to be made to the minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
I'll move approval. This is Director Malone.
Thank you. There is a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second, Director Hutchison.
There is a motion and a second to approve the minutes of March 17th, 2021. Will there be any discussion or debate? Hearing none, clerk will please call the roll.
Director Boggs.
Yes.
Director Bud.
Yes.
Director Eady.
Yes.
Director Hutchison.
Yes.
Chairperson Henry.
Aye.
Director Malone.
Yes.
Director Vick. If you can hear me, can you raise your hand? He heard me.
Don, give us a thumbs up.
Darn it. Okay.
We need some indication from him.
I think he needs to just disconnect the meeting on his iPad and use his phone for both video and voice. He's trying to use both.
Well, why don't we, for the time being, so we can move on?
I cannot hear you.
Yeah, we figured that out. So we can move on. Let's go ahead and show him as an abstention. And I think it would be okay to go back and directly get his votes on these items to reflect in the minutes. I mean, it needs to be done in public, so hopefully by the end of the meeting, we can get him. Otherwise, let's show him as an abstention.
Hang on, our attorney's coming on.
What's that?
Our attorney's coming on. Hang on Director Vic is calling me, so I'm gonna mute for a second.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we'll certainly follow the direction of the chair
Vic, can you hear me?
to keep the
Yes, I
meeting.
can.
Yeah, let's keep it moving. The next item on the agenda is the reports of the executive director. Jason, do you have anything, or do you want to pass it off to Suzanne?
Yep, Suzanne has a few things for the board.
Right.
Good
Suzanne?
afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right. So I do just have a few brief things that we've been working on since our last meeting, March 17th. So a couple of updates related to financial matters. So the financial audit report that was presented in our meeting last month was filed with each of the member cities, which is part of the trust agreement and indenture requirement. We've also drafted invoices for the member cities for their local contributions for FY22. And we have issued 3 of those invoices so far and are prepared to issue the others as we're coordinating with each of the directors before sending those invoices out. A couple of administrative housekeeping items. We
Hello, I
have
lost you.
It looks like it froze.
we had the conflict of interest forms that we must renew annually, and those have all been received from the directors. And we are working on finalizing the
Director
renewal
Vic?
No, I
paperwork.
cannot.
I think the system froze. Looks like she's talking.
Cause she's talking, but I can't hear her.
Sorry about that. Just continue. And
We are working on finalizing the renewal paperwork from Insurica for the directors and officers liability insurance, which expires next month. And finally, this past month, we've been working with Kimley Horn in planning and advertising for the second town hall meeting, which we'll hear more about later in the agenda in March. A couple of things we're working on for the coming month, mainly is our outreach committees. RTA support staff have drafted a schedule for next quarter's outreach committee meetings. And once that schedule is finalized, we'll begin reaching out to the different member cities and stakeholder groups to schedule the next quarter's meetings. Those are my final comments. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
All right. Are there any questions of Suzanne? Any questions? All right. Good report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we move on to agenda item 5, the committee reports, and we begin with Committee Chairman Hutchison and the Property Acquisition Committee. Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm excited to talk about the actions that have taken place with regard to our subcommittee. And I would really like, I think Derek Sparks is present. I'm going to let Derek have the honors of telling everybody some of the good news. So if Derek, if you're available.
Can you all hear me, Marion?
Yes.
Governor?
Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I don't believe my video is working, so I apologize for the disembodied voice here. But no, I'm honored to give the update, and I appreciate you all. It's been a long journey since last year with COVID, and it seems like maybe it took 5 years sometimes in legislative time. But yesterday, Senate Bill 967 passed the State House 89-1. It's been sent to the governor. Stitt today verified that, and so we can you know, I don't like counting my chickens before they hatch, but all indications is that it'll be signed into law. I this morning sent an email to the Secretary of State as well as the Chief of Staff and the Deputy Chief of Staff, respectfully requesting signature on the bill. Sorry about that feedback. But you know, it was I think a great triumph for teamwork for this group. Everyone working together. There was a lot of people that pitched in on this. You know, certainly you all as board members, the Chairman Governor Henry. You know, folks like Scott Martin at the Norman Chamber, Mike Patterson, former Secretary of Transportation. a lot of folks helped. Mark Nestlin, who's from the Transit Association, was very helpful on a number of things, but it all came together, and our chamber was very honored to be part of the process of this. And so, I think you look back and 45-0 in the Senate and 89-1 in the House just shows what a quality piece of legislation it was. And Catherine and you all get a lot of credit for looking at that and Governor Henry's desire to see it be very narrow and very targeted and very straightforward, which I think really came across well to the legislature. We were able to explain it very effectively, I think, due to the quality of the legislation. Certainly great credit to Representative Martinez and Senator Adam Pugh as well from Edmond, who not only carried it last year, but you all know decided to re-up with us this year. And never really wavered or faltered, did a great job at every stage. And, one thing you all probably didn't see was, the Oklahoma Net article today about the rivalry between the House and Senate that's really heated up. And so there was some drama in terms of making sure the bill got heard yesterday. Tomorrow's the deadline. And you don't really want to get caught up, as Governor Henry will know very well, in that last rush before the deadline. And so the timing was impeccable yesterday afternoon for Martinez to present the bill, and no questions, no debate, went straight to the board and was voted on with a very strong result. And so I just want to thank everyone, and we'll continue to be partners of this great mission here. And anything you need from us, this is not the end. I'll make sure you all know when the bill is signed into law. As Governor Henry pointed out, it's 5 days. Recently, he pointed out to us 5 days from it getting on the desk today, and that excludes Sundays. And so my timing is maybe by Monday, but I feel like it'll get acted on fairly rapidly. And so I'll make sure everybody knows. But happy to answer any questions. But thank you again for giving me the opportunity to report.
Thank you, Derek. Anybody have a question for Derek? I'll just remind everyone or anyone that might be listening that the importance of the legislation, as targeted as it was to help us move forward in future discussions with BNSF for utilizing their corridor and potential future commuter rail operations.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I can make a quick comment, I just want to pile on and thank Derek and the entire team. They did a fantastic job. And, I served at the Capitol building for 18 years. And it's a real rarity that a substantive piece of legislation passes by with only one dissenting vote in the entire House and Senate. I mean, that's just, that's pretty amazing. It is a testament to the quality of the legislation, but it's also a testament to our team effort there at the Capitol, led by Derek Sparks, and we really appreciate that. And finally, I just want to remind everybody how critical of a step this is. This is a huge step forward, because if we didn't get this legislation passed, it's a pretty big roadblock for us to overcome. And so this is a big step forward. And as I'm sure Catherine can attest, I think the way we pass this with the full support of the legislature and hopefully the governor will be very impressive to BNSF during our negotiations. So this is a big, big deal.
Thank you for your kind words, and it was a pleasure. And we were very focused because we knew how important it was. And so, but again, call on us. This will remain on our agenda. We're partners, and the business community is very supportive of all you're trying to do. So thank you so much.
We definitely will call on you again. We've got more work to do, but thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Chairperson Henry, a member of the public has raised their hand. I don't know why I'm getting feedback. Mr. Anthony Thomas has raised his hand to be heard.
Okay,
I'm gonna unmute him.
Mr. Thomas, you.
Hi.
Welcome.
My name's Anthony Thomas. I'm a reporter for the Midwest City Beacon, and what does the legislation actually do? Like, what is it?
Catherine, do you want to explain that? Just because, I mean, I can, but I think you'll do a better job.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So the legislation is similar to legislation that's found in many states to permit an operator an operator within the freight corridor that happens to be operating passenger service for a governmental entity, standing in the shoes of the governmental entity, to receive the limited governmental immunity for purposes of the passenger operation. So it extends immunity under the Tort Claims Act to the operator for the limited purpose and time that the operator is acting in this, stepping into the shoes of the government and performing a governmental service.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony, that was Catherine Holmes, who is one of our consultants. Yeah, that was a great explanation. It only to
Lisa,
the
I've
extent,
lost sound again.
only to the extent that the commercial operator is performing governmental functions. For those functions alone, they would have the limited liability that is afforded to government if the Regional Transportation Authority itself were operating the railroad. We don't have the experience that BNSF does, and so this is a very, very helpful piece of legislation. Anybody else want to add anything to that? All right, thank you for your question, Anthony.
Hello, you've reached Lisa Hubble's cell phone. She's currently not available. If you'd like to leave your name and number and a brief message, she'll get back to you.
Chairman Director, do you have anything
Have a
else?
wonderful day.
That would conclude.
At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished.
Okay, that's it.
Yes, sir.
Lisa, this is Don Vick. I've lost sound again.
Thank you for your report, Chairman Hutchison. That's again, that's just really exciting news. Now, Chairman Malone, who is chairman of the Outreach Committee, do you have any comments or reports on behalf of the Outreach Committee?
I do. I have just a few brief comments to make. First of all, Suzanne mentioned this, but the Outreach Committee is in the process of getting meetings scheduled with all of our partner cities throughout the second quarter. It'll be our second visit to each of our cities. And as we promised them first quarter and at the end of last year, we're going to continue regular meetings with them to keep them updated and for them to share information about things they have going on. And secondly, I want to thank Director Hutchison for his presentation to the Norman City Council that he did recently. And I want to thank Director Boggs in advance for a couple of presentations he has scheduled in Edmond. And just remind everybody that we do have a mobile meeting kit put together, and it will be updated regularly so that any member of our authority who is asked to go give a presentation can use this slide deck complete with talking points. We'll get everyone briefed and prepared and remind everyone that how really important it is for all of us to have very consistent messaging. So we'd really like everyone to use this presentation. And whenever you're asked to do a presentation, if you could work through the Outreach Committee or work directly with Jason and Catherine, we can make sure that you have the most updated version of the presentation. That's my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director Malone. Does anybody have any questions of Director Malone? Well, just as with the Property Acquisition Committee, the work of the Outreach Committee is absolutely critical to our success. And I want to thank both Directors Malone and Hutchison for their great leadership. Let's move on to agenda item 6A, which is the receiving of public engagement reports. And I believe, Liz, are you here? Liz Scanlon with Kimley Horn is going to take this item. So, it's yours.
Sure. Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Make sure my audio is good. Okay. Actually, we have included in your packet the 2 engagement reports from the January and March town hall meetings. And Chair Henry, if it's all right with you, we actually have included some further points around the engagement as part of the draft transit system plan presentation. So I might defer my commentary to our next agenda item if that would be okay with you.
Okay. Yep. Is that it on the public engagement reports?
Unless Jason or Catherine wanted to add anything.
I'll just say they attached to your agenda packet was a very extensive amount of information regarding the public engagement and our town halls. They were extremely successful. And I really appreciate everyone's involvement. I do have one question, Liz, if you don't mind.
Sure, of course.
I noticed, and you know, who knows, it may have just been an arbitrary thing, one night versus another, but I noticed that participation in the second town hall dropped off fairly significantly from participation in the first town hall. And that may have just been everybody was excited to hear what was going on, and then they figured it out. And I don't know. Do you have any insight as to why that might be?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that as a team. There's a couple things that could be happening. There's a lot of events and demands on folks' time. We did see the on-demand access into the town hall meetings typically sees an uptick. So after the meeting live event happens, we see online that people are accessing the Zoom and watching it and checking in. So it could be that there was other competing events or things for people's time. We did see quite a good, healthy amount of on-demand access to the March town hall meeting. And it could be that there were folks out there that felt like they got what they kind of needed in the first meeting and didn't choose to attend the second meeting. And we're not totally sure what happened, but still feel really comfortable and happy with the amount of engagement we're seeing. And we did see a very good response through the rtamoves.com website, so the more interactive website where we got really good feedback and active participation. So it could just be that the community felt comfortable with providing their commentary or their thoughts through our new tools instead of participating in the live event.
And we've actually had input and questions from over 80 members of the public, all of which have been responded to by Liz and Catherine, I think. So
right,
probably Jason.
I think our team feels really comfortable with the participation. We see probably better engagement through these virtual settings just because people have the freedom to attend and participate at their leisure than we did when we were doing some of the in-person events. So I think we're feeling quite confident, quite comfortable that we're getting really good feedback and participation and hits on the website.
And we've mentioned the participation. Chairperson Henry, I've got those numbers in front of me if you wanted me to just state them publicly, in terms of like Facebook Live or Facebook views and Zoom participants.
Sure.
So in the first meeting, we had a total of 135 Zoom participants, 811 Facebook Live views, and then 57 questions and comments. And then, as you pointed out, the second town hall was down. We had 65 Zoom participants, 95 Facebook Live views, and then 26 questions and comments. And yeah, we've responded to all of those questions collectively as a team. And just to reiterate what Liz had mentioned, we've been doing public meetings now for transit for some time, and this is really, really good attendance. I mean, comparing it to an in-person public meeting, it appears the virtual approach really garnered a lot of participation, at least in my opinion, more so than I think we could have potentially received in public.
Yeah, I agree. Are there any other questions before we move on? Okay, let's move on to agenda item 6B, which is consideration of the RTA transit system plan.
Chairperson Henry, would you
Yes.
like to have a motion to receive the reports?
I think that would be a good idea. Is there a motion to receive the report?
So moved, if you can hear me.
Good job, we heard you. There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second by Director Boggs. Thank you. Will there be any discussion or debate over receiving the report concerning the transit system plan? Hearing none, clerk will please call the roll.
Director Boggs,
Aye.
Director Bud,
Aye.
Director Eady,
Yes.
Director Hutchison,
Aye.
Director Malone,
Aye.
Chairperson Henry,
Aye.
Director Vic.
Aye.
I voted 7 ayes, 0 nay. I declare the motion to have prevailed. Liz, do you want to continue? Or who's doing this?
Yes, I can. Jason or Catherine, did you want me to go ahead and jump in? And I think I'll hand it back to Jason at the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you'll cover the presentation, that'd be great.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I want to introduce my colleague Luke Schmidt is here with me. He's going to help me share the slides, and we're going to review with you the draft transit system plan, which is a really exciting moment, I think, for all of us. So hopefully Luke can share the slide deck we've got for you. All right, we're in business. Let me make sure I can see it. Okay, so our first slide up on, Luke, if you go to the next slide, is the agenda. It is maybe a deceptively short agenda. What we wanted to do was recap a little bit more of the engagement feedback we received. So we talked about the metrics and sort of the attendance in the last item. This item, I wanted to give you a little better understanding of what we heard. And then we're going to review for the board and the public the proposal of the draft plan. So next slide, starting with engagement. We did reach out to a wide variety of different venues to make sure we had good attendance at the 2 town halls in March. We also launched the RTAmoves.com website, which was fantastic, and we saw a lot of great access to that. We conducted a series of board briefings over the months, met with different stakeholders, launched notices and tried to spread the word really on social media, as well as doing kind of the standard press releases and local media coordination, and then doing some e-blasts. So we really tried hard to reach out as far and wide as we could to get the word out about the town halls and the upcoming plan. Next slide. So the RTAmoves.com project website, which will sort of track the studies that we will be doing, that Kimley Horn will be working on, is a collaborative site. It's intended to help the community interact with us in a virtual setting. And so for this particular last round on the town hall, we had some activities that the public could do to give us some feedback, including kind of an idea of their order of priority for the corridors. There was an ideas board where we had a lot of good feedback around how to implement some of the draft goals, an open forum to ask us questions and provide feedback. And what we expect will happen as we go is this website will grow and evolve, and we'll continue to use it as a great venue for virtual engagement as our study progresses. Next slide. And so we talked about this just a minute ago about the engagement, and as I said, we felt really, I personally am in my career, this is such great attendance and great feedback from the community to have so many Zoom participants who sat with us live as well as through Facebook Live. And then the amount of interest and curiosity and concern over what we're doing was just really awesome to see, and a great start. On the next slide, we can talk a little bit about kind of giving you some sense of what we heard and digesting the Q&A that we received and some of the comments. Overall, I think it's important for the board to know there's so much enthusiasm and excitement out there for the transit options that are before us. There was a lot of questions, we got a lot of questions around sort of, the dynamic about funding and how things are going to work and the timing and sort of the sequence of things. We also saw suggestions about first and last mile connections and bikes and amenities and sort of the details that we will get to in the advanced planning process around, how the transit corridors will look and feel and operate, et cetera. In terms of some of the suggestions, some specific ideas that came through, we got a lot. We did have people giving us ideas about we should have, bikes, or we should have different kinds of things. We also got some ideas for additional corridors to be included on the map. Some recommendations or some ideas in terms of ensuring that we have a comprehensive transit system. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this in a bit, but around the plan itself. But I just wanted to recap, maybe as part of this item, that we did do some assessment from past studies, right, and carried forward what came before us from 2005, from 2015. And those elements had already had some level of analysis on them. So nothing that we started with was completely a new idea. There was something that we had inherited from a past study. And so there's a level of feasibility, of data or analytics that were already understood about each of the corridors that we put out for public feedback, right? And so through the engagement that we did and through board briefings, what we were really doing is reconfirming and validating some of those past ideas and carrying them forward as an RTA transit system plan. And so I would say to some of these suggestions that we've gotten, and we can talk a little bit more about this, if there's an interest in examining a completely new idea or a new corridor, our suggestion would be to study it in further detail through a feasibility or what we call major investment study to understand if there's merit to that corridor, and then add it as part of a future system update. So that's just a nod on some of the ideas that did come through the public process around maybe adding some things to our maps. And we'll talk about that again when I get into the transit plan. And then the final thing is, you'll see here that interest from the community around how to connect the goals that we are going to present or propose today and how to make them happen and implement them. And so a lot of the themes that came up were about really making good connections between destinations, about making sure the system is really accessible for everyone, that it's equitable, and that things like the American Disability Act were adhered to. Really a lot of interest in ensuring that whatever is built as far as a regional transit system is supportive of economic and workforce development, that it does promote growth and vitality in the communities. And then finally, ensuring that whatever we do is financially sustainable and environmentally sustainable in the long term. So I think the community felt to us very aligned with where we had put some of our goal statements out for their feedback. And so those were the themes that kind of came through as part of the engagement that we received. And what we've taken away from them, which is on the next slide, is sort of what we do going forward. And so again, a lot of enthusiasm. People are engaged and are watching and are tracking our work, which is awesome and important. I think we took away that there was a lot of questions around the RTA itself. How was it formed? How does it interface with ACOG and ODOT and others? And so I think as we go forward, we're going to be really mindful to continue to tell sort of the story of the RTA and how it was formed and what the role is and how our process will work going forward. There was certainly quite a lot of curiosity about potential additional partnerships with the BNSF or with others. And that also related to so we got asked a lot, and our takeaway is a lot, as you can imagine, of interest in funding and financing and how we would pay for future investments in these corridors, of course. So people are really keen to understand that and watch how that will unfold in the future. There's some, assumptions out there, I think, in the community about the mode that we would operate on some of these corridors. So we will be mindful of our communication in the future about how we talk about in the planning process when we get into specific alignments and specific vehicle choices, how we are going to do that with the community. There was just a lot of questions and maybe some confusion around, what kind of train or what kind of bus we were going to have. And so we're keen to sort of continue to communicate really well on those fronts. And then of course, everyone's really interested about where the stations are going to go on each of these corridors. We got a lot of questions and a lot of interest in stations, which relates to community quality of life and connectivity and usability and all of those things that transit's intended to support, right? To make communities really vibrant and healthy. So that's what we took away as part of our work and that we'll be digesting as part of our upcoming work to make sure we're really kind of keeping an eye on. I'll take a breath and pause to see if there's any questions on any of that or any thoughts from the board before we jump into the actual plan itself. Okay, well then let's talk about the draft transit system plan. It is a very exciting milestone. We have been at work since last fall in September. You can see here the milestones that we've accomplished to get to today, which is to put before you our recommendation for the RTA's first transit system plan. And this has included our examination of past studies, some briefings with the members of the board, our engagement process. And so we're really excited to come today with a conclusion to this first part of our process. Luke, next slide. So in your packets and before you is a plan document. It's a formal transit system plan. It's made up of several components. We thought it would be helpful to step through each of these so you understand exactly what we're asking you to approve today and what's in this plan framework. So first, I'll just kind of walk through these quickly, but first up is, Luke, next slide. We wrote a bit about the RTA, considering that we did hear kind of a lot of interest and curiosity about the RTA, what it is, how it was formed. We wanted to make sure that this first plan really spoke to that and recapped for the community, which we've done in our engagement and our town hall process, but to have it in the plan, what the RTA is, how it was formed, and the agency's responsibilities vis-a-vis the member cities. And so the introductory sort of part of the plan talks a little bit about the agency itself. Next slide. It's important to remind the community, I think this came up a lot during the town hall, is the timeline. And these types of transit investments do take time to mature and germinate and come to fruition. So we've included a bit about the process, where we are today, which is the first step on the transit system plan, but where we're going, which is into these more detailed planning studies that will get into the specifics for each corridor, the type of vehicle, where the stations go, eventually into the environmental clearance, engineering process, and seeking capital investment grant monies from the Federal Transit Administration, and then finally into implementation. So we want to make sure it's really clear in this first plan how the planning process will unfold. Next slide. In terms of process, we did start, one of our first tasks when we came aboard was to examine what came before us. And we spent some time talking in past board briefings about this, and we did recap this for the community. There's been more than 10 years worth of thinking in central Oklahoma about regional higher capacity transit, going back to the 2005 fixed guideway study. So our team really dove into these to pull forward concepts, goals, visions, and ideas from each of these plans that you can see here as a foundation for the draft transit system plan before you. And it's important to note, again, just to recap for the benefit of the community in particular, that all of these studies were done prior to the RTA's formation. So we sort of inherit past work, which was excellent work, and what we're doing is codifying it vis-a-vis the transit system plan. The other side of the coin on this is that as we move any corridor forward into being eligible for federal funding, we need to ensure that these corridors are part of the regional transportation plan for central Oklahoma, which comes through ACOG's planning process. So what we expect would happen, assuming a favorable acceptance of the plan today, it will go to ACOG to be included in the region's overall transportation plan, which is a check mark for the Federal Transit Administration for projects to be eligible for their grant funding. So an important, this step is an important step for federal eligibility for any of the projects coming forward. And then finally, the sort of the transit, the regional transit corridors are part of a larger transit framework. And we talk about in the plan the layering of the important systems that provide overall transit mobility and options in the region. And that this layering and this framework creates a healthy, robust, comprehensive transportation system to connect our communities with where they need to go to work, to go to play, and to live their lives. And we can step through this one by one. If the next slide is starting with the wonderful fixed route bus system here that exists, and we expect, as well as the streetcar system. I don't want to forget the streetcar system. But this is the existing network on the screen. You can see that connects people currently to the local destinations, and important that this is a healthy and really vibrant fixed route bus network that will help get people from the future higher capacity transit stations into the communities. It's an important foundation of our system. There's also initiatives by other partners, next slide, that are out there in the being developed or in design, including the Northwest BRT bus rapid transit system that's under design by Embark and COTPA. And then there are the MAPS 4 BRT initiatives examining potential bus rapid transit services into Northeast Oklahoma City and south of downtown. So again, these are layering important investments in the local communities to connect to the larger regional system. Very important that we acknowledge that those will be important to the overall transportation network. So one of the major components and part of our work has been to provide some goals to guide the draft transit system plan and the planning work that will come in the future. And so these are larger sort of vision statements that help guide kind of where the region will grow in terms of higher capacity transit. We started with pulling forward some of the goals and objectives and different things out of the past plans. We also looked at other transit system plans across the country to sort of see how others are doing it, and came forward with these 4 major sort of buckets that speak really to how people move. So the mobility and connectivity goal is really about increasing overall mobility, or how we get around the region to go to work or go to school or do what we need to do. A goal statement around really making this, and we heard this through the engagement process too, an equitable and accessible, safe system for everyone to use. So our elderly population, our ADA community, for everybody to be able to access the new regional system. An important goal around economics and the workforce development in making this new system a catalyst for future growth in the region, to make not only to grow our region, but to make Central Oklahoma nationally competitive and bring jobs and residents into the area. And then finally, in sustainability and viability, to make the system, whatever we do, cost effective and efficient, and invest our resources responsibly, as well as to be environmentally conscious. So these are really important, the 4 goal statements that frame up the plan and provide a framework for our work going forward, all of our work going forward. Now, in terms of, before I sort of jump to the map, I just wanted to recap, and I sort of mentioned this in the community engagement slides, just to pause for a second about how we put together the map of the regional corridors that are before you for consideration. So again, nothing that we started with were entirely new. Everything came through an assessment of prior studies and reflects those studies. So there is a level of analysis and examination and analytics that already sort of provides a foundation for us to build upon. We vetted those past study elements through a series of briefings with the board, with our engagement through the town halls. And we will just say that the, where we started from was the 2015 commuter corridors, but also adding and considering a line to the airport, as well as to serve in the future Yukon and Mustang, where there's quite a bit of residential and growth to the west of downtown. And so again, as far as new lines on the map, which we did hear some feedback from some folks about putting some new lines on the map, if there's some interest from the board to think about putting some new lines that haven't been studied before, our recommendation would be to undertake a feasibility study, or what we would call kind of a major investment study, what would provide some basic kind of foundational data for the board to decide at a future date to include it as part of the transit system plan. Because remember, this is now your vision for our vision for how to grow higher capacity regional transit in Central Oklahoma. And so our recommendation would be anything that hasn't been studied in the past would be warranted just to examine it, and then decide if it is appropriate to add to the map at a future time.
Hey, Liz,
So yeah, yes,
can I ask, in that respect, can I ask a quick question?
of course.
If we approve the transit system plan as proposed today, and then later we wanted to amend it to add a new corridor, that's an easy thing to do, right? That's not a problem.
Yes, very, very, very easy, very typical. So typically systems, you know, on an order of business tend to update these types of plans. Some cities do it every 2 years, some like to do it every 4 years, but this stuff happens that has to modify or adjust. And so an amendment would be entirely appropriate at some point in the future if there was a decision that we needed to reconsider the transit system plan. And I'm glad you asked that because that is an important consideration. This is not a static one and done plan. It can evolve. So with that, I let the ta-da moment of what we're proud to present, which is the RTA's transit system plan. And this includes corridors you can see on the map, sort of go around the circle here. So a north to south corridor serving Edmond to Norman, a corridor generally from downtown that would serve Dell and Midwest cities to Tinker Air Force Base, a corridor from downtown to the airport. And again, the airport is a major economic engine, a major driver of jobs and different things. There's lots of employment centers out at the airport, including FAA and different agencies, but also a line going from generally downtown to the west that could in the future serve Yukon and Mustang and growth areas to the west of downtown. And I will say that this embodies a long-term vision. There's a lot of work ahead of us to sort out all the details of this. So this really does set a framework and a vision, and would be, we would pursue this over some number of years and some period of time. So it really sets a vision for us all to work toward. With that, I'm going to kick it over to Jason, and I think he's going to make a couple additional remarks.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Liz. So yeah, just to follow up on really, some of Liz's closing comments, the planning process, if you will, to get us to the transit system plan certainly has been, I think, robust. As mentioned, we started with looking at a certain number of corridors and added a few corridors as we went through the process. I think, for the board's sake, a lot of you having been involved, maybe this is your first transit system plan, if you will. I think, at least in my opinion, it was very efficient. We got it done in a pretty short amount of time. So certainly good for the future of the RTA. And then it really does set us up for the next steps. And so not only for the benefit of the board, I know the board understands this, but in particular for anybody that's attending the meeting, this is really, as described, kind of the vision for transit for the region. But we still have a lot of work to do. There's a lot of additional steps in studying these corridors further. And then, of course, the goal here, at least the interim goal, working with Kimley Horn and Catherine, is to get us to where we have a project or a program of projects that can be reviewed and considered by the FTA. And so this is kind of the first step in that multi-phase process. So what we're asking the board to do, of course, is to consider the plan, approve the plan, and if the plan is approved and adopted by the board, then authorizing me as the interim executive director to be able to submit this plan to ACOG. And then ACOG, of course, will include that in their Encompass 2045 long-range plan. So great informative presentation. What we're really asking the board to do is to adopt the plan and allow us to be able to submit it to ACOG for that long-range plan for the region. Happy to answer any questions about that.
Thank you, Director. Are there any questions? Any questions? You've heard the presentation. Are there questions of Liz or Executive Director Fairbrush?
And Chairperson Henry, just as a reminder, we do have one resident signed up to speak on this item.
Right.
Okay.
I think now, if there are no questions from the Board of Directors, now would be a good time for Mr. Hopper to make his comments. Is he on, and can he be unmuted? just for the benefit of the other board members, Mr. Larry Hopper signed up early to make comments on this particular item. And he has reached out previously to me and Director Malone that I know of. And he has some very, very good points. And so without further ado, if he is on, let's hear from Larry Hopper.
Mr.
Thank
Hopper?
you.
Yeah, okay.
He has
I
agreed
think you
to
can hear me.
keep his comments to under 4 minutes.
Yes, well, hopefully shorter than that. Okay, but I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak to the board today. I'd like to think that my credentials as a professional transit planner should be of merit. And hey, I want to congratulate the board on the passage of the Senate bill this week. That's wonderful news. A lot of good work is going on. Basically, yeah, there are 4 corridors that are recommended by your team for the transit system plan. And basically all of these, one way of putting it is they sort of get a free pass up front to be in the transit system plan. And I do recognize that all of them do have some origins as maybe a bus rapid transit route or other back in the 2005 fixed guideway study. Some of them I will mention that, like the West BRT at that time would have only gone as far as say the Turnpike and not actually all the way to Yukon. But you know, I understand that, you know, there's some need to modify that. But simply put, I strongly recommend that a 5th corridor be actually added to the transit system plan, not in say 6 months or a couple of years, but soon. And I recognize what was said earlier about if we were to add some type of a study, perhaps it should have some type of a feasibility study or an MMIS sort of a study. Those can be pretty heavy prerequisites, especially the MMIS. Feasibility study would seem to be, you know, perhaps, you know, sufficient enough in my view, because I'm concerned that to try to add later to the list is going to generate perhaps some controversy and even some resistance, because these types of studies are indeed expensive to do. But if you think about it, that northwest area of Oklahoma City and what this northwest corridor line would do would be to run from downtown, perhaps from the probably from the Santa Fe station, all the way out to the vicinity of 122nd, Northwest 122nd and Meridian or MacArthur. And, you know, this puts it into an area that has a lot of voters in it, a lot of population, and a lot of key destinations as well. And it does something that the Northwest BRT, while it's a great little BRT line, you know, it does something that really can't do for the northwest part of Oklahoma City and therefore for the region. And remember, you do have Piedmont and Deer Creek on out beyond the city limits, and you've got a part of town that's just going to continue to grow because of the topography and the public investments that are present and coming. So, you know, the Northwest BRT is a great line, and I had considerable time being a project manager on different parts of the planning, but it really is BRT light. And compared to the type of transit that I think the Regional Transit Authority is proposing for the other corridors, it'll basically be too slow and too low capacity to really entice the voters. And, you know, basically in Oklahoma City, it seems that elections are basically won or lost based on the participation of voters who live basically, let's say, north and west of downtown, you know, all the way out to the border. And I think you really do need to kind of keep them in mind just for that reason, nothing else. So just a little bit more to say, you know, a Northwest Red Line could connect a lot of different destinations, and an alternatives analysis or even a feasibility study should show that. And it would basically not really need to use so much railroad right of way, but could use just a few underused miles of the Union Pacific, starting at around Northwest 3rd and Classen. How you get to the Santa Fe stations, I'm not going to try to go into that today. But after that, it's basically land under city control or ODOT control of the Fairgrounds Trust, Water and Wastewater Trust, even some public parks. NEPA should probably find a de minimis impact on those public parks if you can do it right. But look at different options, and it can serve these destinations plus the Integris hospital area, the large offices that are beyond Integris, etc. It's realistic enough, I would believe, to add to the list soon. And what I'm hoping is that, you know, without a lot of heavy prerequisites, to try to add that sooner than later. you know, it might very well make more sense than some of the other corridors that are largely in Oklahoma City. And again, conserve Piedmont and Oklahoma City. Just another quick paragraph. And I should say that, you know, I know the consultants are trying to do a great job, but I did send in this idea back around March 31st. But it was actually last Friday afternoon that I was finally consulted about the idea. And by then, I believe the agenda had gone out. And so it definitely wouldn't have had much consideration, to my knowledge, you know, until after that time. They were nice enough, very professional, but it was kind of a late due. And then the final thing I want to mention is that ACOG's 2045 plan, and I'm on one of their citizen committees, they won't actually adopt that until October, and they're definitely going to want cost information for basically each of the corridors, because that's what they call a cost-constrained plan, fiscally constrained plan. And so when they look out ahead, they're going to need some preliminary idea of cost of doing some things. I just kind of want to point that out. But again, I believe that we're really losing out on an opportunity for the region, not just Oklahoma City, if there's not some type of a Northwest corridor high capacity transit line. So, hey, I want to thank you all for giving me this time to speak, and I'm glad to visit with folks at another time in more detail about it. But thank you very much.
Mr. Hopper, thank you for your comments. I think they're very good comments and something we should seriously consider. Are there any questions from the board of Mr. Hopper? Oh, he may have hung up. Okay. Seeing none. Liz, I hate to put you on the spot, but I would just kind of like to hear your thoughts following those comments.
Yeah, I mean, I think we certainly respectfully take in the comment, but as we've examined and had a methodology to how we put this particular version of the transit system plan, we were careful in pulling forward corridors that had some, as I mentioned before, base feasibility, analytics, and study before us to ensure that it is appropriate to put it in this draft system plan. There are certainly some regional versus, you heard me talk about the sort of initiatives by Embark or by others that are more locally facing at this moment. So I think our recommendation is still it's an interesting idea, certainly, and I think it warrants some examination, but our recommendation would be to study it, to bring it to sort of a level that has some analysis around it before recommending whether it should or should not be on the RTA's plan. And I certainly would ask Jason or Catherine to chime in if I.
So this particular, the Northwest route that Mr. Hopper was talking about has never been included in any of the prior studies. Is that right?
That is our understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is correct. As far as the particularly the proposal going north of Northwest Expressway, kind of directly north.
And we've talked about in the past that, you know, if the Northwest BRT turns out to be a real hit, that's something that could more easily be converted to some kind of rail, right?
I mean, there is that possibility that, you know, there are systems that do that, right? Start with a bus service and transform or grow into a rail service. So certainly a possibility, I guess.
Okay. Any
Could I offer a couple of comments?
Yeah.
You know, I've looked at all this for a long time, and frankly, I think, you know, what Mr. Hopper's proposed certainly has merit. I think all of us recognize that there's great population growth in Northwest Oklahoma City. Frankly, I drove up to my in-laws in Edmond and went up 74 all the way past the Kilpatrick just a couple of weekends ago and noted that. But that said, it hasn't really been looked at, and it'd be easy to say, oh yeah, sure, it's a no-brainer. If there's population, we just put it on the map. But I don't think that's really the best way to go about it. Like we discussed earlier, was mentioned, transit systems plans are a living document and function with new information as the city grows, as, changes in commuter transit occur. So I think it's an easy one to look at and say, we should look at it going forward to determine if it should be added at some point. I think I'm all for that. I don't think we should adopt it and add it right now, especially considering the fact that we are not initially operating as an RTA like DART or UTA, which is a comprehensive transit operator of the entire system, including all local bus, all regional bus, all rail. So, a lineup to Memorial, their Kilpatrick up in there is essentially still all within Oklahoma City. It's not necessarily multi jurisdictional or outside of each of the city's boundaries that we would consider more of the RTA's current initial mission. And so that kind of raises that question, whether it's something that would be looked at more effectively as part of Embark, as part of one of their plans, as opposed to something we should be putting on the map. So I think it's got a lot of merit. So there's a lot of things to look at, and the fact that we don't have any rail corridors up there, of course, if it was going to be any kind of rail transit corridor, you're talking light rail. And seems to me that if it was going to be any kind of initial system, something like a park and ride up north and a simple express bus will give a lot of service to people. But again, that's, I think, something that needs to be looked at as far as which agency and who's going to be best qualified to include that in their system. And I'm not sure at this point if we know those answers.
Yeah,
I agree with that, Marion.
and I'd like to, also point that out. I mean, I think it's a really important foundational question. Who has jurisdiction, right? It's not clear to me that it's an RTA project. It may better be an Embark project, but it certainly would require a conversation between RTA and Embark to actually decide as a policy matter, is this truly regional? I mean, every other line on the plan, with the exception of the airport line, is multi-jurisdictional, which is the essence of what the RTA, it reflects its formation goals, right? And the reason we formed the RTA was to provide connection between multiple cities in the central Oklahoma region. I think that the airport line is distinguishable because of its very clear regional importance in the transportation of people to Oklahoma, and then from the airport through multiple destinations from beyond the airport. But it's not clear to me if there is a similar rationale for this line. There may be, but I would think it's really important to understand what Embark's position is on that, what the city of Oklahoma City's position is on that. And I think taking the time to understand that and decide as a policy matter, I don't want to rush into making a policy decision that we haven't had time to really carefully think through.
Excellent. Further comments or questions?
Yeah, I had a question either for Director Hutchinson or our interim executive director, Burbosh. When you say it was not included on the prior studies, is that the 2005 and the 2015? It has been excluded from both of those?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Well, you're meaning the 2013 study of the commuter corridor, right, not included in either one of those.
I appreciate Catherine's comments on jurisdiction. I think that's important and educational to hear. I do have one more question Mr. Chairman, but it's not specific to Mr. Hopper's comment, so maybe we come back to it after we finish discussing Mr. Hopper's comments.
Okay, I think Director Eady had a comment.
No, I just was saying that I agree with what he was saying and with Catherine's comments.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add that, you know, as a support team for the RTA, handling the administrative duties, I mean, going through this public process, getting, you know, this suggestion, having it brought up at this meeting, being reflected in the minutes, it's public record. I mean, we are not going to let it go away, right? I mean, we're not going to likely, obviously up to the board, we're not going to likely just talk about it today and not consider it again. I think we've talked about opportunities to amend our plan if you know, there's reason for that. I guess I would just assure anybody that's you know, listening or attending the meeting that this type of public feedback, I know how serious the board is about it, and you know, retaining that, and so we'll certainly likely be looking at it again.
Thank you. If there are no further comments or questions regarding any new corridors, then I would open it up to any other questions about the transit plan.
Yes, I had one for our interim executive director. Jason, could you just please walk us through the next steps again? And I know that timing is fluid, so I won't hold you to that, but assuming this passes today, walk us through the next steps again, please, sir.
Yeah, so really the next steps for the transit system plan itself are, I mean, you know, pretty straightforward in that obviously we will make sure it's available on the website and publicize it a bit through social media to let people know about, you know, this really significant step that the board has took. So that's kind of the public side of it. The administrative side, you know, our next step is to get with ACOG and you know, review the plan with them, and then make sure they have as much as we can possibly provide them for their long range plan that they're working on. And as it was mentioned, you know, their deadline is, or you know, they're kind of finalizing the plan later on in the year, but when Catherine and I met with them earlier, they were really looking forward to be able to kind of get this type of information this spring. So, and I think the board and the consultants have been aware of that, and we've met that, you know, we're in that time frame.
So specific to discussions with ACOG, it sounds like the timing is syncing up in a great way.
Yeah, I would concur with that.
Thank you.
Further questions? Adopting the transit system plan is a big step. So I want to make sure we have plenty of time for questions or comments. All right. If there are no further questions, we need a motion.
Mr. Chair, Director on the phone needs to make some comments.
Director Vic?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. On page 7 of the draft report, this is more of a political issue, but they list the corridors as being north-south connecting Edmond to the north and Norman to the south. I think we need to include the word more in there because we're connecting these communities. And on the east one, we need to add Del City and Midwest City, not just Tinker Air Force Base. And on the west corridor, we need to add Mustang, Yukon, and Mustang. So it becomes an all-inclusive.
Yeah, so it's clearly multi-jurisdictional in description, I suppose.
Yes, the way it appears now, Oklahoma City is connecting to Tinker and to Will Rogers and to Yukon, and we're leaving out the other communities.
I think those are really good points. Liz, do you have any?
No, I think those are great points. Those are, yes, we can change that for the final version.
Director Vic, do you want to make that in the form of a motion to amend the?
I would be glad to make that in the form of a motion.
Does everyone understand the motion? All right, is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. Will there be discussion or debate? Seeing none, I would ask the clerk to please call the roll on the amendment.
Director Boggs,
Aye.
Director Bud,
Aye.
Director Eady,
Yes.
Director Hutchison,
Aye.
Chairperson Henry,
Aye.
Director Malone,
Aye.
Director Vic.
Aye.
The amendment passes.
By a vote of 7-0, 0 nay, the amendment carries. Now we need a motion to approve the RTA transit system plan as amended and to direct the interim executive director, Jason Fairbrush, to forward the transit plan to ACOG for inclusion in the Encompass 2045 plan. Do we have a motion to that effect or to any other effect? If somebody wants to make a different motion.
I'll make a motion as stated.
I'll
Okay,
second.
thank you. There is a motion from Director Hutchison and a second from Director Malone. Will there be any discussion or debate on the motion to adopt the plan as amended and transmit it to ACOG? Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, hearing none. Please call the roll.
Director Boggs,
Aye.
Director Bud,
Aye.
Director Eady,
Yes.
Director Hutchison,
Aye.
Chairperson Henry,
Aye.
Director Malone,
Aye.
Director Vic.
I saw his lips move. It looked like he said aye.
Yes, I said aye.
Okay.
By a vote of 7 aye, 0 nay, I declare the motion to adopt the plan to have passed. Director Vic, by the way, we couldn't hear you or see any indication of your vote earlier on the minutes, approving the minutes of the last meeting. So we listed you as abstaining. Do you want to publicly declare your vote on the minutes of March 17th meeting, or do you want to just stick with abstention?
No, I've read the minutes and I would move that, or I would say that I approve the minutes.
Okay, good. So we've got it in the public record that you approve the minutes. He didn't miss any other votes, did he, Lisa?
No, he did not, Chairperson.
No, he didn't miss them, but there weren't any other votes where we couldn't get an indication from him. Okay, so let's move on to agenda item 7, which is consideration of a resolution setting a public hearing on the annual budget as required by the RTA trust indenture. Director Fairbrush, do you want to talk about this a little bit and tell us why we need to do this?
Sure, yeah, just a few comments, right? So in keeping with the trust agreement and indenture, our annual budget process necessitates us to introduce the budget to the board in March. Of course, set the public hearing this month, and then public hearing for the FY22 annual budget would be at next month's regularly scheduled RTA meeting on May 19th. And then the board can choose to adopt the budget at that time, or if there's feedback or other considerations for the budget, we can always bring it back in June. But yeah, so that's the process. Again, I think we had a pretty robust discussion of the budget last month. I'm happy to revisit any questions the board may have. I do know we received a request to send the detailed line item budget out to all the directors, and we did distribute that as an information item. Of course, the budget itself will be adopted at more of the summary level that was presented last month.
Thank you. You've heard the explanation. Are there questions regarding the resolution or its purpose? Questions? If not, is there a motion to approve the resolution, which is in your agenda packet, by the way?
So moved.
There is a motion by Director Boggs. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second by Director Eady. Thank you. We have a second motion and a second. Will there be discussion or debate? Discussion or debate? Hearing none, I would ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Director Boggs,
Aye.
Director Bud,
Aye.
Director Eady,
Yes.
Director Hutchison,
Aye.
Chairperson Henry,
Aye.
Director Malone,
Aye.
Director Vic.
Aye.
By a vote of 7 ayes, 0 nay, I declare the motion to have prevailed. Agenda item 8 is to receive the financial reports and to ratify and approve claims for the period of March 1st through March 31st, 2021. Director Fairbrush, you want to
Sure.
talk about that? You want to explain it?
Yeah, I have a few comments on the financials. Again, just as a reminder to the board, this is our second month of submitting to you for your consideration and reference. A little bit different format on the financials than what we've had in the past. And we really, working with our treasurer, decided to make some changes so that we could really try to show revenues and expenditures for the RTA in a couple of different ways, comparing not only the original budget that was approved, but also calculating like a year-to-date budget and then comparing that year-to-date budget to actual revenues received through the year or expenses incurred through the year. And so that's really what you're going to find on pages 1 through 3. Again, without getting into all the details of the numbers, but really more so trying to explain the report. The first report on page 1 is really kind of your roll-up. That's the total budget, including the local funding and then also grant funding. And then you simply have a breakout on pages 2 and 3, where page 2 is really just the budget for the local funds. And then page 3 is the budget for the grant funds. As you know, our grant funds are limited really to, one grant, and that's funding the contract with Kimley Horn for the most part. I did want to mention to you that the grant fund, if you'll notice, it shows a cash balance of negative 32,000. And try to offer a brief explanation there. Basically, with the grant funds, it's a little bit different than our local funds, right? We didn't start necessarily with a cash balance. Our grant funds are managed on a reimbursement basis. So as we have the expense, we then submit and receive reimbursement. So your grant fund balance, if you will, is generally going to be either zero, right? Because we're even, we've received everything we've incurred, or it's generally going to be negative, which basically is just a reflection of grant expenses that we've incurred that we haven't yet received reimbursement on. So I just felt like maybe sharing that with the board in case you were curious about why a negative number was showing on the financial. And then page 4, of course, is the report you're familiar with. This is the the allocation of local funds. Just as a reminder for the board, after the claims are paid in April, in anticipation of the board approving claims today, we estimate having $825,077 of local funds remaining. And then finally, we do have a year-end forecast that we've now included as part of the RTA financial packet. This isn't a financial report that's prepared by the accounting department. It's one that we as staff put together. And really the idea is to try to give the board an idea of, if we continue on the expenditure and revenue trend that we've seen through the year, in this case through 9 months of the fiscal year, where do we think we're going to end up, in terms of budget? And at this point in time, we're estimating finishing the year with our local funds about 225,000 under budget. And then on the grant funds, about 63,000 under budget. So at this point, and a lot of it has, a lot of it is timing and invoices we receive from Kimley Horn, but at this point, we are expecting to finish under budget, and I would expect us to continue that course through the end of the year. And then finally, the claims that you have for your consideration for approval total $57,529.82. There's a report in your packet, and it's comprised really of 4 payments: one to Holmes and Associates, payment to Kimley Horn, payment to Cotpo for the administrative services fee, and then one that you haven't seen before. It's a small payment, but maybe a new vendor to you. That's Indigo Digital, and that was really for some software to help set up the RTA.org email address, if you will.
Thank you. Are there questions regarding the explanation of this agenda item?
Great explanation. I really appreciate all the hard work by everybody with the forecast going forward. It's going to be great to have for the board.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a quick question. At last month's meeting, we approved a new allocation for local funding. And where are we on gathering those new local funds?
Right. So we have, based on the direction of the board and the schedule that was presented, allocating the local funding need amongst the cities based on population, which is how the RTA was basically originally set up in terms of funding allocation. We have created invoices to send to the member cities, and we're trying to work very closely with the representatives or the directors of those cities to make sure that, that we're sensitive to, the city manager's office or the elected officials, knowing that, that invoice or that request is coming. So, so far we have sent 3 invoices, one to Oklahoma City, one to Norman, and one to Del City. I know Director Boggs had basically authorized or indicated that he had had an opportunity to notify Edmond. So I've actually asked staff this morning to send the invoice to Edmond. And then I believe we're going to have some discussions with city managers from both Moore and Midwest City, just to, I guess, if you will, get them kind of reacquainted with, what the funding will be used for. So 2 cities we still have left to send invoices out to.
Thank you. Any further questions? Any further questions? If not, we need a motion to receive the financial reports and to ratify and approve claims for the period of March 1st through March 31st, 2021. Is there a motion?
Moved. I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Director Malone moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director Eady. There is a second. Okay, will there be any discussion?
Chairperson Henry, Mr. Hopper has raised his hand again.
On this?
I don't know if he's referring to this because I can't see any message, but he would like to address the board.
We'll give him 2 minutes on this issue of the financials. Okay. If he's agreeable to that, then we'll proceed. Otherwise, he can wait till public comments.
He's not.
I'd like to wait for public comments, and I'll keep it under 30 seconds.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Larry. Okay. So we have a motion.
Yeah, I'd like to wait 30 seconds.
Okay.
Okay. Director Boggs.
Aye.
Director Bud,
Aye.
Director Eady,
Yes.
Director Hutchison,
Yes.
Chairperson Henry,
Aye.
Director Malone,
Aye.
Director Vic.
Uh-oh.
Director Vic.
He's on mute, Lisa.
Oh, go ahead, Director Vic.
Aye. Aye.
There we go.
This is fun.
By a vote of 7 ayes, 0 nay, I declare the motion to have prevailed. Now we are on public comments. This is the time when anyone who is listening to or attending the meeting that has not already had business before the, well, you could have already had business, but anyway, this is time for the public to come and comment. So I know we have at least one commenter, and that's Larry Hopper, who is on and has been unmuted. So Mr. Hopper, please go ahead.
Well, thank you, Chairman. And I think I did go over 4 minutes, so I'll keep this to 30 seconds. Hey, multi-jurisdictional, I do understand that's a key concept of this whole thing. And, you know, I would note that the village just blocks away from the route that goes en route to Edmond. But in terms of this idea of some type of a northwest route, well, you know, one way could actually take it through the city of War Acres and be within a couple of miles of Bethany as well, but it could go through that. And I should mention that on that west line, it really doesn't ever get close to Mustang. It looks like the options would keep it 4 to 5 miles from the city limits of Mustang, but it does really serve far west Oklahoma City well. So thank you for letting me kind of clarify about the multi-jurisdictional aspects of that corridor.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Hopper. I assume there are no questions of Mr. Hopper, but if there are, you can ask now. All right. Hearing none, are there any other public comments? Has anyone else indicated an interest to comment?
Yes, Mr. Mike. There is no last name, just Mr. Mike.
Mr. Who?
Mike, for just a first name.
Okay.
And I've asked him to unmute.
All right, Mike, you have been unmuted, and this is your time for public comments. Please go ahead. Try to keep it to 2 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike Patterson. Sorry, I didn't put my last name in there.
Oh.
I don't know exactly how to do this, but Mr. Chairman of the board, I just want to say how proud I am of what you guys are doing and how far this has come in a relatively short time. Having worked on the original legislation with Representative Joyner, this is the vision he had, and I applaud your efforts and the efforts of Kimberly Horn to get it to this stage already. That's all I had, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Wow. Thank you. I think those words were very appropriate, and of course, you are welcome to address the board anytime. We appreciate your input. Okay, any further?
Person, yeah, Henry, yes, Mr. Tom Leatherby.
All right, this is excellent. We never get public comments. Mr. Leatherby, you are now recognized for public comments, and we ask that you try to keep it under 2 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to say thank you to the board, the entire RTA and the consultant team, and to Executive Director Fairbrush for those excellent town halls. There were a number of participants from Del City involved, and they really did a great job of getting input from the community. We look forward to continued input from all the members of our stakeholder groups.
Excellent, great. Well, thank you for those comments. They're greatly appreciated. Any questions or comments following the comments? Are there any further public comments, Lisa?
I still have one. Mr. Patterson still has his hand up again, so I'm going to allow him to talk one more time.
Okay. Mike, do you have any further comments?
No, Mr. Chairman, I don't. I guess I Okay, I've taken my hand down. Sorry.
Put your hand down then.
My hand is down, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Sorry.
Hey, no problem. Okay, any further, I can't see hands. So, Lisa, any further comments?
No, not at this time.
All right, you can put
I
this
have one more comment, and one will be on public comment.
I'm sorry? Director Hutchison, did you have a comment?
Yeah, when you're done with public, I had one more thing I just wanted to add.
Okay, our last call for public comments. Can you put Mike Patterson on mute, Lisa? Please.
Yeah, I'm looking right now, sir.
Okay. He's at the bottom of my screen. There you go. Okay, I think we're done with public comments. Going once, twice, gone. All right. Director Hutchison, we'll let you make a comment under public.
Thank you. I just wanted to say one more time and remind everybody and just really say so much about our consulting team and Catherine. And if we go back, I think everybody will recall that one of our goals, especially that Catherine had laid out through all of the work she had planned, was to hopefully get it to the point where our transit system plan got approved at about the same time as our legislation got approved. And I think a year ago or more, that seemed possible, but maybe highly unlikely. But I think we should all celebrate the fact that pending a signature from the governor, we did that. And I think everybody's to be congratulated on that.
Great strides. I agree. Thank you very much for those comments. And I couldn't be happier with our consultants as well. I think they've just done a great job leading us down the track, and we're headed in the right direction. So enough of the rail cliches, but any further comments? Any new business? Which of course are non-action items that were not known and could not reasonably have been known at the time of posting of the agenda. Any new business? All right, hearing none. Is there a motion to adjourn, Director Vic?
So moved, sir.
Director Vic moves to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. I just want to thank everybody. What a great meeting. This has been fun. Really happy that we had some public comments. We had media listening in and asking questions. People are really starting to take notice, and we are, as I said, we're moving in the right direction. It's kind of fun. With that, I guess we need to take a roll call vote on adjournment. Lisa?
Director Boggs.
Aye.
Director Bud.
Aye.
Director Eady.
Yes.
Director Hutchison.
Yes.
Chairperson Henry.
Aye.
Director Malone.
Aye.
Director Vic.
Aye.
Have a
All
good
right.
evening.
It is unanimous. With that, we stand adjourned until next month, the 19th at 2:30. See you then if I don't see you sooner. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.